know what the right fit is? And how do you even go about finding kind of the best fit or the right fit? There are so many wonderful options of boarding schools in the United States. So many of them are here today. And so I think I'm going to offer you a framework and some things to think about. Sure.
As you begin your research. So first off, I think it's really, really important that as you get started in this process, that you and your child kind of align on what's most important. What are your priorities as a parent? And what are your students' priorities? And sometimes they might be a little different. You might be thinking about finances or security or brand reputation, and your child might be thinking about who are my friends going to be and what am I going to do on the weekends and other things. So I want to suggest to you that asking your child what they want to get out of this experience is a really good place to start. And then you can be thinking as a parent about what you value most in their education and in their future. And again, I think just being really honest with each other about what you want to get out of this is a really great way to begin doing research and ultimately making a decision. So here's a question that you might want to be thinking about. What factors are non-negotiable to you? And what might you be maybe a little bit more willing to be flexible about? Maybe, for example, location isn't that important in the end. Okay, so what is non-negotiable, and what is where might there be some flexibility? The second thing, obviously, everybody's different. Every child is different, and I think their happiness and their success at boarding school is really dependent on whether, obviously, that school has the things that is going to make your child happy and successful. So you could be thinking about your child's academic strengths, like what do they excel at? What aspirations do they have? Are they passionate about science, or is it humanities that's really interesting and exciting to them? You might be thinking about their social preferences and obviously their extracurricular interests. Are they more introverted? Are they more extroverted? Do they like team activities, or do they want some opportunity to pursue independent pursuits? And then obviously, what do they love to do? Are they into arts or sports or community service? And then this is really important. What is their learning style? Sometimes students need a little bit more structured guidance, or they might need some academic support or enrichment. Sometimes students are really independent, they're go-getters, and they want a really self-directed environment. So I think, as you talk through your child's academic strengths, their social preferences, their extracurricular activities, their learning style and support needs, some of this will start to become a little bit more clear to you. Okay. So here's the question. You're seeing a trend. I'm going to give you a question to think about. What are their distinct academic strengths, social preferences, and learning style? Be thinking about this as parents. And students in the room, you be thinking about this too, because you want your parents to have a clear understanding. And this will help you as you start looking at schools. You'll be able to kind of have these things in the back of your mind. Okay. Living away from home, especially as a young teenager, can be really hard, right? It requires independence and maturity and a level of self-reliance that students, if you don't have those skills sharpened already, don't worry. Boarding school is going to help you sharpen those skills over time. But parents, you want to be thinking about your child's readiness and emotional readiness. And this is important because schools really vary in what they expect of students. Some schools want your child to be really super independent and incredibly self-reliant before they even come to campus. That's what they're looking for to ensure they can be successful in their particular school. But other schools are going to be a little bit more nurturing. They're going to kind of embrace your students and help you develop those skills over time. Okay, so schools can really vary in what they expect of your child in terms of their kind of emotional and social readiness. So here's the question. To what degree is your child kind of ready to take on the responsibilities of living away from home? Okay, how might you prepare your student to be even more ready to live away from home? Okay, those are skills you can start building now, even if boarding school's a couple years away. You can start to think about what it might take to be ready to to manage the details of your child's life on his or her own. You may have heard, if you attended an earlier session, and I think it's really well represented in the schools that are visiting today, there are so many different kinds of boarding schools. Most of us are what we call college preparatory schools. We provide a really academically rigorous program and a foundation that is, aimed at preparing students to be ready and to be attractive to really highly selective colleges and universities, primarily in the United States, but often abroad. We typically offer classes like advanced placement classes, although some of our schools have an IB framework. Our schools also vary in size. There's a school here today that has well over 1,000 students. There are also schools here today that have 150 students. Size matters, right? Sometimes there's a saying, you could be a big fish in a small pond, or you might be a small fish in a big pond. What kind of fish? How big a pond? So think about size, and small schools can really feel like these really intense, close-knit communities, and that might be what you want or what your child wants. Some students really just love the energy and the kind of anonymity sometimes that comes with being in a really big school with lots and lots of students, and the diversity that can sometimes afford. So size matters. Think about what size fish are you and what kind of pond do you want to swim in, okay? I'm representing here today an all-girls school. There are all-girls schools and all-boys schools, and there are co-ed schools. And I think that is an interesting consideration. I think single-gender schools can, for the right student, be an amazing fit and offer different benefits in addition to the same benefits as a co-ed school. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about why I'm so passionate about all girls schools. But again, here today, there are all girls schools and all boys schools and co-ed schools. And I think single sex schools can, offer an environment that's free of stereotypes about what a girl should like or be good at, or what a boy should lean into or not lean into. And that might feel like something to consider as you're thinking about your options. The other thing that I think is a differentiator for schools is many boarding schools, it's part of the tradition of boarding schools in the United States, sometimes have a religious affiliation. That might mean very little, maybe just it's in the name of the school, but doesn't really play out in the culture or in the community. But for other schools, there are formal chapel services, and they say prayers before they sit down and have a meal together. That might feel wonderful to your family. It might, even if you're not sure you align with that faith perspective, might also feel good to you because it's really based in values and community. And there's so many values that the world's traditions kind of share in common. So you could be thinking about that. Is that going to feel right for your family? Is that aligned with what you want? Okay. So obviously, what kind of environment is going to help your child really grow into their best selves? I know that academics and academic programs and faculty, all these things are incredibly important. And I think the school's level of rigor should be carefully considered. And you'll know as parents and students kind of what your appetite is for a really rigorous program, and or what kind of specialty programs or distinctive programs are you most interested in. So some good questions to ask. And first of all, most of our schools put our course catalogs on our websites, and we display our faculty on our websites. You should go look and see what kind of courses we offer and who's teaching at our schools and what does it feel like to be in our classrooms, because that will all kind of help you understand what our educational philosophies are, and kind of what the experience of your student through the academic kind of experience would be. So does the school offer a range of courses that interest your child? What are the most rigorous courses in a particular discipline that is offered? When you ask students, or if you have a chance to connect with students, what do they say the ethos is in the classroom? Like, does it feel competitive? Does it feel nurturing? Who's teaching there, and how long have they been teaching, and what are they teaching? Some schools also have, as I said, like really highly specialized programs So for example, at our school, we have an internship program. We pour a lot of resources in giving our students 3 internships over the course of their high school experience. That's unique to our school, but that you might have there might be other things that are unique to the schools you are looking at. And again, you'll want to make sure that that is of interest to you, because often they're graduation requirements and we make you do it. Okay. So what are your child's current interests and what are their future goals? And, high school can sometimes be a bridge from what they're currently interested in to what they might someday be interested in. And that's the role of the school, to help kind of be that bridge. One of the things that's really important to our schools is we are so much more than just our academic program. Obviously, that's our first and foremost priority, but we also see building your students' kind of interest in things outside of the classroom as almost equally important. I sometimes say that the boarding part of boarding school is just as important as the school part of boarding school, because we're trying to develop well-rounded young people. We want them to share their talents with us. We want them to be able to try new things. So, thinking about extracurricular activities and being able to demonstrate through an application process an excitement to participate in extracurricular activities is really important. School's important. You're going to, you'll be able to show us that you've had a wonderful academic history, but we also want to know what you're doing outside of the classroom, or if you haven't had a lot of exposure, what do you want to try? So again, we have all sorts of wonderful sports programs, arts programs, community service programs. At Madeira, we have a horseback riding program. So again, you want to be asking yourself, like, what is your child really passionate about outside of the classroom? Are they a beginner? Are they deeply experienced? Because you'll want to know what level they might, like, how are they going to enter that activity at a new school? If they're worried about getting cut from a sport, that might be a good question to ask of the schools. Can I start this having never done it before? Or is there no room for me if I've never had any experience playing field hockey? Am I automatically going to get cut? So again, these are things you could be thinking about. Like, what do you want to lean into? Or does your child want to lean into? And if your child's passionate about golf, don't look at schools that don't offer golf programs. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to the admissions office either. Okay, so make sure that the schools that you're looking at offer the things your child is really interested about. Okay, so what opportunities outside of the classroom will allow your child to explore their passions, develop new skills, and build their friendships? This is kind of a big one: culture, mission, and values. The school culture and our environment are really essential for helping students, I think, feel like they're at home and also that they're going to thrive. Some schools will feel more traditional. Boys might wear coats and ties to classes. There might be formal seated meals. Some schools might feel a little bit more progressive. They might allow their students to call their teachers by their first names as opposed to Ms. Reynolds. So schools can really feel on a spectrum of like really traditional to more progressive. All of our schools have mission statements, and every decision our schools make, we are thinking about our mission statement. So you should know what those are, right? And lots of our schools offer value statements. There's a set of values that our community feels is really important that we hold dear. And it's probably a good idea to know what those things are to make sure they align with what your family's values are. That sometimes is a good kind of way to make sure you're aligned on as a family, because this is a partnership between you and a school. So making sure you're aligned on values is good. So what type of school culture would make your child feel both challenged and supported? Because we want to do both things. We want to challenge your student, and we want to allow them to feel supported as well. All right, I'm getting closer to the end here. I told you I'd put in a plug for all girls school, and I think it's really important. The same is true for all boys schools, but all girls schools offer, I think, a really unique opportunity for girls to kind of be encouraged to excel with out gender-based stereotypes. And I think the same is true at boys' schools. And studies show that students at all girls schools kind of often experience greater academic confidence and leadership opportunities than those in co-ed environments. We are really focused on building self-confidence and helping our girls to strengthen their voices, promoting leadership, helping them to think about how to develop their networks as they get older, and have them in an environment where they are surrounded by a really supportive network of peers. And our programs are designed, our academic programs, around how girls learn best. The same is true, I think, of all boys' schools. And so if your daughter is really interested in STEM, that's a field, obviously, where women, at least in our country, are typically underrepresented. I think an all-girls school provides that opportunity for them to be in an empowering and stereo-free environment, learning about STEM with other smart girls who share that passion. So again, it's not for everybody, but I think it's a good question to ask, because part of what you're trying to, you need to ask a lot of questions as you go through this process, right? So how might a single gender school environment benefit your child? Okay. Campus and location. Our campuses are really thoughtfully designed. They are beautiful, and they're well maintained. They look like college campuses. And place matters a lot, right? Since your child is going to be living and eating and sleeping and learning and playing, you should think about all these different places where your student is going to experience their education. Where might they spend a lot of time? Are they going to be in the arts building? Are they going to be in the science labs? Are they going to be in the athletics center, in the weight room, in the equestrian facility? And even if you can't travel to visit schools, through your research and on our websites, you can spend quite a lot of time doing kind of a virtual tour of our campuses and seeing the spaces. Okay, I encourage you to do that. And location, obviously, and climate. You know, the United States is very large, and the different regions vary in climate and atmosphere and even ambiance. So, you know, does your student want to be in a big city or near a big city? That might be important to your child to be able to access things that they're used to living in a big city here. They might want to experience something very different and to be in a rural environment and have that as a kind of counterbalance to where they live at home. And so our schools are in urban areas and suburban areas and in rural areas. And that's just an important consideration because that can determine kind of where the fun happens on the weekends. Like sometimes the fun has to happen there on campus. Sometimes the social activities on the weekends can incorporate all the things in a city in a safe way, I should add. But you could be thinking about, you know, kind of what that feels like for your child and how important is it. Again, a rural environment might just be more peaceful for your child, or they might want the energy of a big city. And weather obviously varies. If your child doesn't like snow, it's going to be pretty snowy in New England. But there are other, you know, it'll be a little less snowy in California and less snowy in Washington, D.C. And another important consideration, I think, as it comes to location is, do you have family members or relatives or friends living in the United States who could serve as a contact or an emergency guardian in case something happens? Like, who's going to be the first responder if you can't get there? And so sometimes that can be an important consideration when you're choosing schools. I want to pause there because I've given you a lot to think about. There are lots of other considerations, but I think I'll bore you if I keep going. But you could be thinking about college placement outcomes. That's sometimes an important one for families. Financial considerations, sometimes that can really have an impact. International student recruitment, international student kind of orientation and support. How do schools do that? Those are good questions to be asking as you're doing your research as well. So I'm going to pause there because I want to leave this open-ended to answer questions on any of these topics or any other, or to give you more time to speak with admissions counselors, because there's so many wonderful schools represented here today. Can I answer any questions? Yeah.
In terms of the general admissions, in terms of the general admissions across boarding schools, how important is the SSATs
Sure.
and academics versus sort of well-rounded?
Yeah. So the question was around how important are SSATs and academic, like the transcripts and all of that, and versus a well-rounded. Again, it might vary a little from school to school. I can speak on behalf of my school. The SSAT is a marker for us. It's a data point. It can sometimes tell us where a student might have some difficulty or some more challenge within our program, because we've got years and years of experience of seeing that and knowing that, given SSAT scores. For some schools, it could be more of a factor. And so I think it's an important question to ask of each school. I think some schools have really low selectivity rates, so they can afford to be kind of very selective and choosy in who they're bringing into their communities, and they may need to see a student is demonstrating kind of a really strong level of academic performance to know that child's going to be successful in their program. Other schools, there might be a little bit more latitude. They know that they can really work with a student who has maybe been challenged in some areas of school, and they provide supports to really help that student grow into their best selves. So again, it really varies from school to school. But for us, it's a data point, and there's so much more to who that student is beyond their SSAT scores. Yes?
Students have a chance to check the school before then go there. Check the school before then go there. For example,
Yes.
I heard 1 week in campus.
So we really do. It's not,
decision.
Yeah, it's not always possible. We understand, but we do encourage families to come visit during the application process. So we typically we start our application processes usually in September or October, and we welcome families to come see us all the way through sometimes February or March even.
Yeah.
And that allows you and your family to get to feel us and see the community and talk with as many people as possible on campus. It allows us to have that time with you together and to get to know your child better through an interview. We do ask families, once they know whether they've been admitted or not, there is a point at which a family has to tell us and say, yes, we're coming, or no, we're not coming. But that is all well explained, I think, by the schools.
School.
Yeah. Yep.